Back to another episode of A Gift from Adversity. Thank you very much for tuning in. My name is Juri Love. I'm your host. Today we have an exciting guest, but before I introduce my guest, I want to introduce my book, which is the same title as this podcast. It's called A Gift from Adversity. And this book came in 2020. It's available on Amazon. The subtitle of this book is Overcoming Sexual Abuse, Domestic Violence, Bullying, and Homelessness. This is about my life in Japan, but also some of the experiences that I had in America, and then some tools to overcome adversities. So please check it out. Today, we are recording episode 118, and I'm very grateful to have another guest. So let's invite him. Hi, Todd. Thank you very much for coming in today. Thank you for being here with us.
Yeah, thank you for the invite and looking forward to it for sure.
Absolutely. So before we get started for the main questions, can you tell us who you are, where you're coming in from today, and then what you do, and if you have any website or social media people can follow?
Yeah, so my name is Todd Baker, and my company is called Project 9 Life, and I am a transformation coach. The easiest way to get a hold of me is to just go to my website, which is project9life.com. It's got all the information on there, as well as links to be able to look at the programs and kind of get some information on who, kind of some background on what we offer. So.
And which state are you coming in from?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm in Denver.
Okay, wonderful. I'm in Massachusetts, so welcome.
Yeah.
Happy to have you. So let's dive into our first question, which is adversity. So can you tell our audience what was your adversity?
Yeah. So my adversity was basically, for lack of a better term, looking in the mirror and not liking what I see. And, just wanting to get healthy. And it was based on the fact that I've got two kids. I got a 15 or 19-year-old and an 18-year-old and a 16-year-old. And I wanted to get healthy to be able to spend time in my life and spend days with them, and be able to be active with what they're doing. So I had to get healthy for the short term and the long term, to be there for them, for the rest of their life.
So what do you mean by healthy? What were you recovering from, health issue?
Well, it wasn't necessarily an issue. It was basically I was I wasn't active. I wasn't eating right. Um, I was just out of shape and not able to be active with my kids and what they were doing. And I was spending time. They would be out and doing stuff and hanging out and being active with their sports, with their activities and everything like that. And I wasn't able to be active with them, because I wasn't spending my life the right way in terms of my eating habits, my health habits, and as well as my physical habits.
So you said your kids are teens, and prior to that, like when you were growing up, now before you had a kid, did you have these kind of issues and notice, or you just suddenly kind of opened your eyes, kind of realize?
No, it was slowly but surely over time. It's like, as I got older and, my kids grew, it was just slowly but surely like I got out of shape. I got, you know, started eating worse. They kept being active and I wasn't. So it was just kind of a slow but sure degrade, basically, for lack of a better term, in terms of my health and my wealth within my life. And um, finally it got to the point to where, you know, I just looked in the mirror one day and I was like, I I didn't like at all what I saw and who I had become.
So when you are growing up, teenager, maybe elementary school going back, were you active? Were you eating healthy? Or like when you were growing up, you kind of started that kind of habit too?
Yeah, I mean, like I played high school baseball, I played high school football. As a young adult, like I was still active and I was still doing things on a daily basis. And it was just, as I got older, um, I just found myself being less and less and less active in my life. And it wasn't that I was necessarily doing bad things, like in terms of, you know, drinking or anything bad like that. It's just I wasn't staying healthy, both short and long term. And it just kind of started to go downhill, in terms of what what my life was becoming. So it wasn't like all of a sudden, you know, I was fine and then I wasn't fine. It was more as I got a little bit older, I just got a little bit worse, a little bit worse, a little bit worse, until ultimately that day came where I looked and I was like, you know, this is not going the right way.
Well, thank you very much for sharing that, Todd. Do you recall you said you're active in high school football and baseball? That's a lot of activities and lots of athletic movements. Do you recall at some point, like age wise, like maybe when you are 25, 28, can you pinpoint some of the era that you started to not be as active with as when you are in high school or a young adult?
Yeah, it was like, I was in my 20s probably, or it's probably about in my 30s, I guess, when I stopped being as active. And, I just kind of felt myself as I got older because now I had kids, so it was like, uh, I was finding myself busy with them and less active with them because I was more, just spending more and more time because I had kids and just being able to be active with them. But kind of that tipping point was, I was in my low 30s when that's when I looked in the mirror one day and that was my moment of, this is not what I want out of my life. So it started with probably in my 30s and having kids and being just different activity levels because it was more time with them and less time with focused on myself. But then once I got into my 30s, or into my 40s, then it was really kind of like I wasn't focused on them really at all, and it was more focused on me because they were getting older and they were spending all their time doing stuff, and I was spending all my time with them. And it's just I got to the point where I wasn't I wasn't active with them, but I was more active with me. And, um, it just got worse.
So do you mean you gain weight, or
Uh-huh. Yeah,
do,
for sure.
do you remember how heavy were you at some point, maybe the heaviest?
Yeah, the heaviest I got, I was probably, I don't know, I was probably like 310, 320. And then once I started on my journey of health and fitness and, just a repetitive, like I would every day, I was getting more and more active. I ended up over the course of a year losing 100 pounds. So, because I spent the time and focused on not like a drastic weight loss and not like you know, I'm going to cut out everything in my life. It was a slow but sure. Like I started losing weight because I started doing stuff and being more active on a daily basis. But over time, it had a huge positive effect. And it's not that I was focused on weight loss. I was just focused on activity and being more active in my life. And ultimately, it paid off because all of a sudden, a year later, I was 100 pounds lighter and I was a lot more active. And I was there with my kids and for my kids because, you know, I was just every day I was doing the same thing. I was just every day I was being more active and doing more stuff.
So I just want to highlight, I really appreciate you sharing, but let's save the tools part for a little bit later in the podcast. But I just want to focus on um, weight, that you said you went up to 310. And I had a guest from Canada, Louise Monroe, and then she has transformed from overweight till like she's really great shape right now. And then she started keto diet and all that stuff. And then diabetic, she's like beat the diabetic diagnosis. And it's very and I feel like there are a lot of stigma about weight and then health issues and the eating habits, especially when you get to the stage where my guest was telling me fat shaming, self-sabotage, and like you said, you're looking at the mirror and then but then you still feel the need of eating more, and it's just like bad cycle and down spiral. So do
Hmm.
you remember feeling, oh my gosh, I need to eat more, or like, when you are gaining weight, like, was it like conscious or like or more like subconscious? Because I know you mentioned that you are very athletic in high school and then you like, gain weight in that process. Do you recall any mental health stage? What were you thinking? Or did you get maybe some harassment or bullying comments, like mean comments and stuff? Do you remember that?
It, it, no, I don't. Because it wasn't like people saying anything or doing anything or treating me any differently. And my journey it was, I mean, good for your guest for taking that journey and making that path. Whereas mine was a little bit different. Like mine was just a slow but sure kind of day by day type of path to where I didn't do anything spectacular or super special. I mean, like for my diet, it was just I ate healthier. I cut out carbs. I cut out like sugars, added sugar, stuff like that. For activity, like literally I just started walking every single day. So it wasn't like something that I made like a drastic change. It's just I was very consistent in what I was doing, but I wasn't doing anything like out of the ordinary. It was just I was very consistent with what I was doing, and the little small things that I did, like the eating better. It wasn't I wasn't cutting stuff out or eating anything like going to the grocery store and only getting this and this or anything like that. It was just I cut out a couple different things. And then for health wise, like I wasn't going to the gym for 6 hours a day. It was just I was just walking every single day, and I was consistent with it. And it paid off in the long run because you know I lost a ton of weight, and I was because I was consistent with it. It was easy to do, because I wasn't making any, these drastic changes or anything like that. It was just, I was just being consistent with what I was doing, which made it easy to be consistent with what I was doing.
So, yes, so that it's more of the tools that you can share later. But what my question was, when you are facing this adversity of being maybe overweight or didn't like what you saw, do you recall any of the mental health stage? Were you sad? Were you depressed? Or do you like recall any of those moments?
It wasn't like sad or depressed. It was just, I guess the best way to say it is like disappointed that I had let myself get to where I had gotten to where like I looked in the mirror and I was unhappy, but it wasn't like a sad, it wasn't a depressed, it wasn't like, a feeling of, oh God, I gotta, like I'm doing so bad and I've got all this depression and I've got all this bad stuff. It was really just like, looking in the mirror, and it was just a sadness of that I had let myself go from, being active, being healthier to not. That was the biggest thing, was like I had just let myself go basically.
Well, thank you very much for sharing that. And then I think would you say, like, when you said you are disappointed looking at yourself at that time, not now, but at that time back then, did you have any counselor or friends, partnered, close people that you were able to share those kind of feelings, or you kind of taking it in all yourself by yourself?
Actually, my accountability partners were my kids. It truly was like, because I had shared with them, um, like very, very much like why I was doing what I was doing, why it was important that I was getting in better shape, why it was important not only to me, but why it was important to them. And they became my accountability partners throughout of, whatever I was doing. Like they were there for me the whole time. Like, hey, you know what, you're going to do this, you can do this, stuff like that. So I didn't have like a external partner, in terms of like a friend or a, a significant other or anything like that. It was truly my kids that were there for me, because they were the ones that were holding me accountable. They were the ones that were sitting there like, Dad, this is important that you do this, because it's important to us that you're there for us short term and long term. So that's they became my true partners.
Thank you. So let's move on to the second question, which is the tools that you use to overcome. And this is my absolute favorite part of the podcast, because I have over 100 guests, including yourself, and everybody who went through the challenges and adversity in their lives. They have this very unique techniques and then the real techniques that they use to combat these challenges. So I know you mentioned the consistency in eating stuff, but what are the top tools that you can share that really truly worked for you?
Yeah, the biggest couple things is first and foremost is it wasn't necessarily like what I was doing, but it was why I was doing it. Like I did a lot of kind of looking inside myself to figure out why it was important that I get in shape and why it was important that my kids, I was doing it for my kids. So that was number one was I wasn't as focused on what I was doing. It was more important and it was a bigger driver for me that why I was doing it. And then secondly is because like most people, you get to a point to where um, you've tried all sorts of different things, all sorts of different times, and you've been unsuccessful. So the biggest thing for me was like I took time to figure out like what I had failed with in the past, why I was unable to make it work in the past, like what were those reasons that I would try stuff and I wouldn't make it, or that I would get to a certain point and then I'd fall short. So I spent time like really figuring out like what those reasons were that I hadn't made it in the past, so that the next time that I did this, which was this last time, like I had already identified what my reasons were that I wasn't able to accomplish it, and I put together a plan for how to get past those things because I had already gone through it once, and I had identified like what those reasons were, so that the next time that I went through it, like I already had a plan in place to make it to the next step.
And it's very interesting to hear the word short term and long term, because sometimes when people are usually trying to overcome stuff, sometimes they can only see today, which is a short term, and sometimes it's hard to see 10, 20 years from now of what you're doing today would affect that. So how are you managing that kind of thought when you mentioned about short term and long term? And then if you can say specifically what is exactly short term, means like 5 days today, or long term, is it like 5 years, 20 years, 30 years?
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest thing, and I know the biggest thing for me is it, like when I was going through everything, it wasn't necessarily like I was setting goals. I was changing my lifestyle. And that meant that it wasn't for the next 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. It was for my life. And it was for the lifestyle that I was creating because, you know, being with my kids, it's like there's no end to that. Like, I'm going to be with them. I'm going to share that time with them. And that's going to be for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the road. Um, that I need to be there for them and be available for them. And so I just looked at it as it wasn't necessarily like a goal that was like right in front of me. It truly was like for a lifetime, and for the longest time, like I was changing who I was becoming for that long time. so that I could always be there for them.
And how are the girls doing?
Well, I've got one of each,
Oh,
and
both.
yeah, no, they're doing fantastic. I've got my son is um, just getting into college. My daughter is a junior in high school. Um, they're both doing fantastically. My daughter's got, well, right now she's got straight A's. My son is, he's got like a three something or whatever, and um, they're both kind of very creative in what they're doing and what they're going about, which is super cool because they're writing their own path and they're doing their own things. Um, but they're also doing really well with what exactly they're focused on. And they're just starting out, I mean, you know, being a junior in high school and a freshman in college, their path is just getting going. But they're both doing really well and they're both focused on like what they want to do. And, you know, they'll figure it out as they get older and kind of get more into time. But they've got plenty of time to figure all that stuff out, being that they're, God, I mean, 18 and 16 or something like that. So they're just getting started on their lives and kind of their paths.
So the tools that you use to overcome, you mentioned a lot about your children being a motivational figure and then accountability. But what do you think? I'm just curious, would have happened if you didn't make these sacrifices and changes and realization? Where do you think they might be today?
Well, if I hadn't made these changes, I would be a lot worse. Um, I would be a lot less healthy. I would be, with my kids, like I wouldn't be able to have the type of life and the type of lifestyle that I've got with them. Um, God knows what I would be like, just overall health wise. Like, would I be having like actual health issues? Would I be, having, breathing problems or weight problems or, health, heart problems or whatever? Um, but I would definitely be a lot worse off than I am right now. And unfortunately, it's like I don't know where I'd be, and that's kind of the scary part, is that if I hadn't been taking care of myself, I don't know where I would be. I mean, I might be way worse off, or maybe even not around if I hadn't made changes and gotten healthy. Um, and the scary part is the unknown.
I'm very happy that you had this realization and you're there for your children, and I'm sure they appreciate you too.
Yeah, they better.
Well, Todd, um, I'm just personally curious as a man, as a father, why do you think it's important to be a positive male role model for your children and then be healthy mentally, physically, and then the tools that you use to overcome these challenges uh, for maybe other fathers who
Yeah,
will be listening to this podcast or maybe can relate to some of their challenges. I know I'm not a male, I'm a single mom, but as a single mom, I do have ton of pressures and I'll have a lot on my shoulder. And it's important for me to be healthy. I realize that I come first. If I can't take care of myself, I can't take care of my kids. But
yep.
it took me a long time to realize that I come first and I have to take care of myself. So for the fathers or single parent or whoever is good, healthy figure, what do you think it's the importance of it?
Well, I think what you said is very important, that you do have to take care of yourself. You do have to put yourself first and take care of yourself before you start taking care of your kids, because you know, by doing that, you're able to put yourself in a position to where you're better off to help them out, to be able to support them, to be able to be healthier, so that you're in a better spot, so that you can be there for them as they get older, instead of, you know, struggling yourself when times get tough for them. Um, so I think there's that. And uh, I think the biggest thing with kids is just it's really, it's just, you have to be a support mechanism for them. You have to be there for the good times, the bad times, everything that they're going through, um, because they're going to go through all sorts of stuff, especially as they get older. And, you just have to be there to support them, both short term, long term, everything. And you have to be able to be better off as these things come up, because things are going to come up. I mean, they just are, right? I mean, as a single parent yourself, it's like there's always unknowns. There's always things that, you don't even know that are going to come up, that all of a sudden they just show up, and you're like, oh God, how do I deal with this? How do I handle this? And that's where you have to be a support mechanism, and you have to really be open to have that open conversation with them, to be able to support and to be able to have a real, true, honest discussion with your kids, because it's going to be tough sometimes, and you have to be open to having that type of, conversation, to where you can just be brutally honest with it, but at the same time be able to be vulnerable and be open to have that conversation, especially as things start to happen as they get a little bit older.
Absolutely. So my last question for you, Todd, is a gift that came from your adversity. So what would you say a gift that came from your adversity?
I think the biggest gift is, it really is like my relationship with my kids. Um, it's something that came out of me getting healthier, me being more fit. It turned into a lot better relationship with my kids, to where, instead of just having that kind of on the surface conversation with them, they turned into real honest conversations, to where we could talk. We, could actually have true conversations, on both sides of it, and really kind of share in each other's lives, the good and the bad of what was a lot deeper conversation than it ever was before. So that's definitely the biggest gift that I've gotten, and that they've gotten, is just being able to share in each other's lives a lot deeper conversations, and a lot better conversations, and deeper relationships than we had before.
Well, thank you very much again for coming to a gift from adversity today, Todd.
Yeah, thank you, Juri. I appreciate it. It was good fun. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And thank you to our audience for tuning in. And I hope this conversation helped you and will help you in the future. And I have more guests coming in, so stay tuned.